Can you achieve extraordinary results while making the world a better place? I'm Bruce Temkin, and together we'll explore how. Welcome to Humanity at Scale, Redefining Leadership podcast. Join me as I speak with visionary leaders and top experts to uncover the secrets of humanity-centric leadership. Ready to rethink leadership? Let's dive in.
Purpose is a leadership concept that is frequently celebrated in theory, but all too often neglected in practice. How can leaders transform purpose into meaningful actions that truly connect people and drive lasting action? Today, we're honored to explore this question with Ryan Hogan, a seasoned entrepreneur. Ryan has spent his career not only leading, but also guiding others through his work as a naval officer, founder of Talent Harbor, Hunter Killer, and beyond. Let's dive into Ryan's journey and his approach to building and leading organizations that connect and inspire. Hi, Ryan.
Hey, Bruce. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining the podcast. Let's start by helping our audience get to know you. And this is a tough one, but I figured you're up for it. If someone was to write a book about your life, what would it be? And give us a synopsis of its contents.
Yeah, that's a great one. I think my journey would really be about adversity. And I think I don't know what the title of it would be. I'm sure there are creative people out there that would make an amazing title. Top 10 tips to things to avoid or obstacles to mitigate. But for me, it's been about kind of facing challenges head on. And when I think about kind of the early part of my career and the early part of my life, every step of the way, there were brick walls. There were reasons that things shouldn't or couldn't happen. And I think as someone that had a decent understanding of like what I wanted to achieve in life, I understood that every step of the way there was going to be roadblocks. And I think that's really been kind of the cornerstone of my journey, has been overcoming and trying to figure out ways to solve problems. And that would be it.
So I'm going to be a copy editor, and the name of your book is Perseverance.
There it is.
We'll make a movie out of it.
We should.
So it's just, you have a very fascinating background. Actually, somewhat similar background to mine in different ways. I started my career on working on Navy subs and ended up where I am today. And it's hard for anyone to actually tie those dots together with any reasonable path. But I'm fascinated about your in that, especially a transition from Navy to the creator of Hunt, a Killer game, right? Which turned out it was hugely successful. How did that transition get started? And what kept you going through the entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, I think when I think about like the roots of the entrepreneurship journey, it really started in third grade. I was in Mrs. Price's class, and I would bring in these creepy crawlers. And each day I would sell them anywhere between 5 to 10 cents. But if you wanted a custom one, it was 25 cents. So I would take custom colored orders, and I would go home and I would put all the rubber making stuff, put it in the easy bake looking oven, and then create some amazing creatures for people. But that was really kind of a taste. And I know that's early on, but what's interesting about those sort of data points is I can draw a line all the way from kind of where I am today to that moment, and really starting to understand like what drives demand and like what is marketing and what is creating value in this world. And so for me, the Navy was really about kind of exploration and finding myself. I was not disciplined. I was probably not on the right path at that point. And so while I had great ambitions and I understood where I wanted to be, I didn't have the capacity at that point, the maturity, the discipline, like you name it. I didn't have those things. I didn't have those ingredients. And that's really what the Navy did for me. And it wasn't like the first year. I was still getting into trouble in the Navy in the first and second years. That's probably a story for beers. But you know, today I'm an officer. Today I'm the commanding officer of a unit out of Spokane, Washington, and you know that hey, I'm one of the officers that's like, I've been there, I've done that. I've messed up before and I understand what it's like and what that journey's like. And so I was always experimenting. So once I really started to understand this whole notion, my father would always say, you can do anything that you put your mind to, but you really don't understand what that means until you start accomplishing things. And when you accomplish something, you're like, okay, well, I am able to achieve that. And then you accomplish another thing, you're like, well, this is just a gigantic game called life. And it's about kind of setting that vision and having these small wins as you continue to climb. And it wasn't always wins. When I started putting in officer packages, it took me 3 times. And that's because I made some mistakes earlier in my career. And so I had to prove and demonstrate that I had the capacity and the maturity at that point to transition. When I look at entrepreneurship, it's very much the same journey. You know, we talk about Hunt to Killer, and Hunt to Killer was incredible. We hit the number 6 on the Inc. list. We grew from 0 to $55 million in 6 years. We generated $205 million in revenue. Like, we did some incredible things. But what we don't talk about is, one, like all the adversity, trials, and tribulations in that entity. And number 2, like all of the failure that came before that. Usually what's left out of this story is a company called Run for Your Lives, which was the first zombie-infested 5K obstacle course race. And that grew from 0 to 8 million and then bankrupted just as fast as that company was growing. And so I think when I think about my journey and like, how do we get into these things? I just got a question last week. I was like, did you roll over and think of murder mysteries? Like, no. I started selling creepy crawlers and I started mowing lawns. And then I launched a t-shirt brand, and that t-shirt brand wasn't working. So we launched an event company. That event company, the only purpose of that event company was to move the $100,000 of t-shirts that were sitting in my garage for 2 years. And then you take that and you're like, okay, but then that company failed. Okay, well then I was like, well, we've built a level of expertise in this industry. So we started Hunt to Killer as another live event. That event couldn't scale, but we found product market fit. So then we transitioned to subscription box. We saw subscription box start to fail. So we transitioned into retail distribution. So anyhow, that's a long-winded story of it's just figuring it out every step of the way.
And really, to summarize that, it's Mrs. Price is on your mind all the time.
All the time. Actually, you know what's funny about that? Not just Miss Price, but there was a commanding. So when I say I got in trouble, like I went to captain's mast. I certainly broke the UCMJ, and I'm standing in front of the captain, and everybody else in this program lost their wings. So when I enlisted in the Navy, I was a helicopter crewman. I flew on MH-53 Echoes, did test and development on 60 Sierras. And everybody that screwed up in this schoolhouse got kicked out of the program and went right to a ship. And for some reason, the captain gave me a pass. I don't know why. I like to think that he saw something in me that I didn't even see at that point. But it's both Mrs. Price and that commanding officer back from 2002.
It's interesting. So there are 2 very pivotal leaders in your life that sort of shaped your direction of where you came today, along with sort of overcoming all of that adversity along the way. I'd love to think about, if you think about where you are today in terms of a leader, how would you describe your leadership today? Do you have like a sense of what are the 4 principles or how you see yourself as a leader?
Yeah, I like to think, I like to think about it through the lens of like care, empathy, and growth. And so when I think about some of the things that happened in my life, it wasn't necessarily because people were nice to me. Like that commanding officer, when I was standing in front of him, he was not nice to me in that moment. But there was care, there was empathy, and there was this belief. And that's something that I've carried with me throughout the last, that was 21, 22-ish years ago now. Like that's something that I've carried through. And it's why I still serve in the Navy today. I certainly don't do it for a paycheck. This is a longer story for another day, but as COs, like we have to pay for our travel to get to our command. So like drill weekends, I'm typically losing money based upon plane tickets and rental cars. But the idea that I can give back in the same capacity that people gave to me and believed in me, like that's something that's very inspiring. And so those are the things that I like to think about is like, how do I make a significant impact in this person's life? And it's not for self gain. So if you've worked with me at Hunt to Killer, or you worked with me in any of my ventures, or maybe in the military, you immediately know I'm not doing this for like, I want people to be successful. And if they're successful with me, great. Like, let's have a 20-year journey together. But if you decide that the way for your growth is to move on, we would celebrate people joining the company just as much as leaving the company, and that's something that I've held dear.
So I want to. There's a couple things I want to dig into. I want to dig into like the early part of this interesting statement, which is that care and empathy don't mean nice, and I think that's a really interesting, because a lot of my work is in trying to help leaders understand that it's not this or that things can be this and that, right? And so lots of people might say, well, you have to be empathetic, or and nice. They have to go together. You can't do them opposite, right? But in fact, what you're saying is that nice isn't a requirement. Be empathetic and caring. Powerful statement.
And it's correct. Like, if we're constantly nice, if we're nice to everybody, if we withhold critical feedback, we're doing a disservice to the people that we're leading or the people that we're managing. I would actually say that nice is almost like the antithesis of caring. Because if you truly care about someone that you're leading, you care about their growth, and you're empathetic to the position that they're in, and you can put yourself in their shoes, and you want to help them achieve their goals. Being nice to them, I would say you're actually you're holding them back, because you're not giving them the information that they need in a way for them to continue growing. So yeah, and I've heard this a lot. Like, there's a lot of people out there where it's like, I think folks confuse this idea of empathy and niceness. And like, empathy does not mean nice. Empathy means that you understand where that person is in their current state. So I think like one of the old adages of like, if putting yourself in the other people's shoes, nowhere in any of those definitions is the word nice. And I think it's time we probably separate those.
Yeah, and if they have uncomfortable shoes, then it's an uncomfortable feeling to be in their shoes.
That's very true. Very true.
So as you talked about sort of what drives you, one of the things that you is pretty clear in what you say is your focus on people, right? On the people around you. Now, what I wanted to dig a little bit into was the notion of purpose. It sounds clear to me, at least, and tell me otherwise, at least a portion of what you view your purpose is how you impact other people as role. I'd love you to ground some of our discussion in how you see your purpose and the role that purpose plays in your leadership and the things that you've done.
Yeah. And like, when I think about the things that I've done, like it's been, growth is exciting. And when I say growth, I mean winning, like growth in business, winning in the military, like these things are very exciting. But if that's what you're chasing, like that's a very kind of hollow purpose. And when I think about, like, just speaking from a business standpoint, there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that look at their companies like they're babies, like this is my baby. This thing is so precious to me. It means the world to me. That's never been the case. Companies of mine have come and gone. Some have gone bust. We sold Hunt to Killer last year. And like, I've heard stories of other entrepreneurs that have exited or just for some reason have separated from their companies, and like they lose sleep over that. And they're wondering like, how can this thing go on without me? Or are they making the right decisions? I've lost zero sleep with Hunt to Killer. Like it's not my baby. It's the people that were inside of that. Like, when I think about what is Hunt to Killer up to, I think about what are my former teammates at Hunt to Killer up to, whether they're at the acquiring company or not. And so for me, I've always viewed purpose, and where I find my zen or happiness is working with people and helping people grow and achieve the dreams and the vision that they have for themselves. And for me, it's been great because I can get into any business. Today, I'm in recruiting of all things, and that's a whole nother story. But like, someone from the outside looking in be like, well, how does he go from zombies to Hunt to Killer to recruiting to t-shirts to, creepy crawlers? And it's because it's all about the people. It's not about, I don't care what we're selling. I care about people are growing and they're motivated and they're aligned with the vision.
So how does that sense of purpose for you, which is a focus on the people, keep you aligned with where you want to go? And how does that help the other people around you, right? If they see that purpose in you, what effect does that have in them?
Yeah, I think people feel, this is my perspective, and maybe somebody will be in the comments, be like, that guy sucks, and I worked for him, and everything he said is bullcrap. But I feel like when you're authentic, people can really be themselves. And I feel like when people are heard and you do care and you are helping them achieve whatever it is that they're trying to achieve, they will move mountains for you. And I experienced this in the military. So when you think about the military, the thing that usually comes to people's minds is like yelling and screaming in boot camp. And that was really kind of the culture of the military for generations. And the military over the last couple of decades has really tried to shift towards this idea of like the yellers and the screamers get less accomplished, have unmotivated crews, score less on their tests and evaluations and all those other things versus the ones that really start to drive purpose into the unit. And for me, like, yes, if you think about a company, like the purpose of a company truly is whatever you're trying to achieve. And so, what I think is that you can't force someone to be motivated or excited about what it is that you're trying to achieve as a company. But by nature of creating this type of culture and this type of environment, people will self-select. And so the people that like are truly aligned with what the organization is trying to accomplish and feel like they're heard and seen and actually contributing towards whatever that vision is, they will stay and they will do amazing things. Other people will leave. And that's just as exciting for everybody. That's like, for me, that's exciting because that means that person is most likely growing. And that person's excited because they're heading towards maybe something that aligns more with their vision. So I guess long-winded for that, like, it's, if someone already doesn't have it, for instance, right now we hire recruiters. And so we need people. We need people that love talking to people, that love communicating, that love vetting, that love interviewing. And not everybody has that. So like, you can't necessarily like instill purpose or vision if they don't already have that. But you can support them on their journey nonetheless.
Keith, so it's interesting that the sense of purpose you have, especially if it's focusing on people, is easy to follow and easy to keep up when things are going well. Now, you've mentioned that you've had a number of setbacks, which you've learned from. How have you been able to maintain the balance between that sense of purpose you had around what you want to do with people when times are difficult and you had to go through a crisis?
Yes, many crises. We had crisis at Hunt to Killer. I mean, Hunt to Killer, the thing about growing a consumer product company, especially once you start getting into retail, is the cash flow cycles. So like the difference between a service company and that I'm learning very quickly, and like a consumer product company, is the amount of capital that you need to be able to grow, because the working capital you need for inventory. And so we would constantly, and without fail, it was every single summer, we would go through these periods where we were out of cash and we had to figure it out. We had to solve our way through. And what did we call it? Like the firefighting. We would rename the document every year. But we would just list, the leadership team would get together, we would list all of the problems, and we would try to find the alligators closest to the boat, and we would just start kind of tackling them one at a time. And that has a significant impact on the culture. The other things that have significant impacts on the culture are things like layoffs. And we went through those both at Hunt to Killer, we went through those at Run for Your Lives. And I admire, there's some leaders out there who are like, oh, I'll never do layoffs or things like that. But like, sometimes you have to. Sometimes there's just not a pile of cash sitting around and like, there's no other choice. Either the company goes or we figure out a way to reduce costs. But the thing that kind of keeps those situations intact is, I mean, to a certain extent, not losing your cool and having a certain amount of like confidence and vision to be able to steer. But at the same time, it's like you've built all of that goodwill, and as long as you don't start deviating, as long as like the authenticness and the trust and all of those things that you had built over that period of time leading up to those crises, and like something doesn't, like you're not looked at in a new light because you're withholding information, or you're doing, you've in some case, you've started doing something different, which is now degrading the trust. What I have found is that people will rally, the right people will rally, and the right people will believe. That's not to say it's not disruptive. Like when there is chaos and there are infernos burning, like that has an impact on culture. It always is. But if you've built the right culture and you continue to be transparent and authentic, and you're not, you don't have this two-face where it's like, oh, when things were good, you were smiling, and now you're just yelling at us. I found that organizations find a way to persevere.
It's interesting. So when I think about purpose, I think about it as giving you clarity so that you can stay on course. And I think when you talked about the idea of having transparency and authenticity, that only comes if you have clarity for yourself about what's important and where you're headed, right? That gave you the opportunity to maintain that, and probably helped other people, even if they were unhappy being laid off. They at least said, I see why he did it. And he didn't lie to me along the way. I'm not, it sucked, but, I got to move on. Which is great. So I love to do a little bit of a sidestep of a discussion, because
Sure.
I don't know if you know my background. I have a nickname. Some people call me the Godfather of customer experience. It's sort of a weird name. I got the name when I was too young to be anyone's godfather. But your experience with Hunt a Killer put you in the middle of understanding and crafting experiences that not only were immersive and drew people in, but people want to keep coming back and pay for them in an ongoing basis. So I'd love to know, just when you think about creating an experience that pulls people in, what have you learned? What is it that you know about creating? You've learned about creating experience you could share with our listeners.
Yeah, I'm hoping this is going to be helpful. I was trying to figure out how to zoom it out from like how we thought about products, and I can get into that a little bit. Like I think for us, it's all about like authentic storytelling and then leaving a hook, right? So like storytelling and figuring out where the beats are. And we always talked about this idea of stakes. And what it meant is that there was some character inside of our stories that the audience would resonate with. And then you create some sort of stakes in the story for that person, some sort of tension to kind of keep that person engaged, keep them coming back. Specifically with the experience, though, and I'm trying to figure out how this would translate. I mean, I think it just gets back to authenticity. But, the thing that we tried to do with Hunt a Killer is make you believe that it was an actual investigation. And I'll give you a quick story, which is back in the early days, Derek and I just started shipping these subscription boxes. And that meant that he's the one shipping from his basement. So his wife was mad at me because it was almost Christmas and they had, 1,000 boxes in their basement. I was running customer service. He's doing the stories. We're all doing sourcing together. So there's like 3 of us trying to pull this thing together. And I'm on the customer service a chat, and someone comes in and they said, hey, this is the Harford County Police Department. We need to speak with someone at your organization. And what was interesting about that was Derek and I were from Harford County. And so the idea that like Harford County, Maryland, the sheriff's office would be reaching out to us when like we're shipping these things all over the US, like that was kind of like a Truman Show where we're all in a scripted series ourselves moment. And I was hesitant, but eventually I engaged and we jumped on a call. Evidently somebody, a grandson, had bought this for his grandmother who was in a retirement home, and she received it. And she said, someone just sent me like an actual murder crime case, and I don't know what this is all about. And I tell you that story just to highlight it's for us, it was all about like anywhere you turned, once you opened that package, it felt real. And what I mean by that is like, if there was a website on a piece of paper, you went to that website, there was an actual website. So like we would create fake websites all over the place that made it look like entities or other things that were actually inside the story to help create this immersive experience. I'm not sure how much that would translate, but I think it just goes to the heart of like, by nature, we are storytellers. So it doesn't matter whether you're selling something, we're having this podcast right now and this great conversation. Like if you can hold attention and you do that through good storytelling, authentic storytelling, I think you can accomplish a lot.
I'll bet you Ms. Price was a great storyteller.
She was a great storyteller. I'm going to have to figure out where she's at actually and hunt her down.
Yeah. No, and if you do, I'd love to have both of you back on the podcast and talk to the three of us. I want to learn from her, and I think everyone else would too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, I think we're running low on time, so I have some closing questions, even though I think we could keep going forever. First one is, what's one leadership skill that you think will become even more important in the future? So as you think about where the world's going, or at least where the world you're in, you see going, what's a skill that you think is going to become even more important?
Yeah. It's almost like this idea of self-awareness, but it's not self-awareness. It's like self-disruption and challenging our own norms. Like what I'm seeing right now and what we're all seeing in technology and how fast things are progressing, like the ones that will win and the ones that will stay ahead and the ones that will produce a tremendous amount of value in their worlds are the ones that are constantly disrupting themselves, because we have grown up in an age where or at least for me, like internet was somewhat available. It was still a dial tone, but like, and it took forever to load that AOL home screen, and they still came on like floppy disks for free each month. But we still kind of experience that. The speed at which technology is advancing right now is going to have similar implications as the internet and as the industrial age, all of these different things. And I think what's most important right now for leaders that are out there are being able to set aside some of those biases and some of the things that we learned early on, and being able to keep an open mind and look at things through really just like a balanced, almost like the slate is white type of lens.
It's interesting. One of the quotes that I live by, I started my career early on in the career at General Electric, and I worked for Jack Welch years and years ago. And Jack, you have a Jack book? Yes, Winning. Great book.
Yeah.
One thing he would always say is deal with the world as it is, not how you'd like it to be. And that always, I repeat that over and over. The awareness that you are competing in a reality world, not in a fake world that you can think about in a different way. So I love this self-awareness as an important element for the future. Second question for you, and this is where I'm giving you magic power. So for our listeners, probably know because they're listening, that I'm focused on trying to help organizations become more humanity-centric by influencing how leaders lead. So if I could give you a magic wand, and that's the power I'm giving you, but only for a little bit after the show, you're going to have to relinquish the power because it could be a little risky. If you could have that magic wand and immediately make things change, how would you make organizations more humanity-centered?
There's one thing that I think about with this idea of there's a big debate right now over one-on-ones. And the idea is like, do we have one-on-ones? And there's a frequency. So I used to have one-on-ones on a weekly basis. Some have on a monthly basis. They're going to quarterly basis. And now you have all the new technology, people out there saying one-on-ones are a thing of the past. And there's better ways to be able to engage with our team. The purpose, and I don't know what the right frequency here is, but the purpose of a one-on-one is not to solve business problems. The purpose of a one-on-one is to grow and strengthen relationships and really start to understand the why. And so like the superpower, the things that I would change most is that managers and leaders out there need to understand the whys of their people. Because like everybody, theoretically, if it's a great organization, everybody understands the why of the organization. Why does it exist? Where are we going? What are the core values? You know, those things should be at least table stakes. I know they're not everywhere, but they should be table stakes. But I think one of the things that are left to the side is like people have this wall where they're like, I'm a leader and this is business. And I come in and this is business. What are your business problems? You know, what are the challenges that you're having at work? Everything is business and work related. And that doesn't motivate or inspire people. Like people want to know that, and everybody has their own whys and their own goals. And I think that whatever frequency that you're going to have one-on-ones, you should use that time as precious time and start to really understand who those people are as a human being. because I think that will ultimately better align them with the organization. They will care more about the organization. You will care more about them and their lives. And ultimately, I think that'll make them a better leader.
So I think I can describe your purpose. Your purpose is to fulfill your people's why.
I like that.
Great.
I love it.
Last question for you. What's one final piece of advice? This is open-ended, go anywhere you want. One final piece of advice you'd leave with our listeners.
Yeah. Probably never stop growing. Like, don't stop. And you could put like, don't stop in front of so many different things. Like for me, it's like, don't stop at the brick wall. What was the last lecture by Randy Pausch was one of my favorite books. And I watched his YouTube or his presentation as well. And he had this idea of like brick walls are there to keep people that don't want it bad enough out. And that's a good motto for entrepreneurs. So if I was on an entrepreneur podcast right now, I would say just start and don't give up, because eventually that whole idea of like, don't stop can apply to anything. If you want to grow professionally, if you want to grow personally, like don't stop trying, because there's going to be setbacks. There's going to be wins. There's going to be losses. There's going to be all these things. But at the minute that like you stop reading or you stop growing professionally or you stop doing this, I mean, I think that's the time where we start kind of contracting and getting significantly further off course.
Interesting. So I might even mirror the don't stop with, I was listening to some of the podcasts you were on to get familiar with you a little bit. And one of the things you said is, if you want to do something, get started, right?
Yes.
So it's almost like that's the mirror. Don't stop and get started, right?
Yes. It's funny you say that. Like I would have, I think I just made an assumption about your audience, and I think your audience has already started. But yeah, you're right. Like, get started. But if you're already started, like, don't stop.
Don't stop. I love it. Yeah. I love it. Love it. Well, thanks, Ryan. This was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me on, Bruce.
Awesome. Well, I hope you found my conversation with Ryan insightful and inspiring. If you enjoyed it, I'd love for you to share with others and subscribe to the podcast for more great discussions. Now, let's dive into the after show, a segment where I reflect on the key takeaways from the episode and share additional thoughts and insights. Welcome to the after show, where I'll share some thoughts about my discussion with Ryan Hogan. Ryan's story is nothing short of inspiring. After a self-proclaimed rocky start as a troublemaker in the Navy and a failed venture involving zombies, he persevered and found his way. If we were to title a book about his life, we decided that perseverance would be the perfect choice. Much of his success, as he shared, stems from the lessons he learned from key people along the way. The impact of his teacher, Ms. Price, and his commanding officer was profound. What struck me most is that they likely have no idea how deeply they influenced him. This resonates for all of us. We really understand the full impact we have on others. Let that be a reminder. Supporting and uplifting others is a gift that can leave a lasting legacy. Ryan also shared that support doesn't always mean being nice. When he was acting up, his commander didn't coddle him. Instead, he offered something much more valuable: care and empathy, paired with a focus on his growth. That approach left a lasting, positive impact on Ryan. Those lessons really shaped who Ryan is today. And wasn't it great to hear how much of his personal purpose across all of his ventures is focused around the goal of helping others? We also heard that Ryan doesn't view adversity as a problem. Roadblocks are everywhere, and they serve as a source of growth. This is a great mindset to have, and Ryan punctuated it with his final piece of advice to leaders: never give up. I also enjoyed hearing about Ryan's work on Hunt a Killer. In case you're not familiar with it, it's an incredibly successful immersive murder mystery game, and it has sold over 4 million copies. He sold the company last year. When asked about the keys to success for creating an immersive and compelling experience, he led with one word: storytelling. That really resonated with me. Storytelling isn't just the backbone of immersive games. It's a skill everyone can leverage. It's also one of the capabilities I've relied on throughout my career. To me, storytelling is the gateway to lasting impact. As Philip Pullman once said, "Thou shalt not is soon forgotten, but once upon a time lasts forever." If you want to leave a meaningful mark, learn to tell powerful stories. Finally, when we turn to the idea of making organizations more humanity-centric, Ryan returned to what matters most, people. With his metaphorical magic wand that I gave him, he'd encourage leaders to use one-on-one meetings to truly understand their employees as individuals, their whys, their goals, and what drives them. That was a truly inspiring conversation with Ryan, and I hope you enjoyed it. That's the end of our after show, and I'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to Humanity at Scale, Redefining Leadership podcast. Remember, true leadership isn't only about achieving short-term results. It's about creating a lasting, positive impact on all of the people you touch. Join me next time as we uncover more insights and strategies for humanity-centric leadership. Until then, I'm Bruce Temkin, encouraging you to lead with purpose and empathy and to be the spark that elevates humanity at scale.